Hey guys, did you hear our conversation with Ben Roethlisberger, the legendary Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback, a few weeks ago? Well, in that conversation, at the very end, it was very subtle in the way that he mentioned it. But Sports Spectrum Weekly, he got a notification because Ben Roethlisberger signs up for our weekly email newsletter. And right as we were finishing the taping of the interview, he got a notification that Sports Spectrum Weekly had been delivered to his email inbox. And I thought, well, if Big Ben gets the Sports Spectrum Weekly newsletter, well, I think all of our listeners should sign up for it as well. So here's me telling you that a great opportunity for you to stay in touch with Sports Spectrum for the best sports and faith content delivered directly to your email inbox. You should sign up for Sports Spectrum Weekly. Go to the website, sportspectrum.com/newsletter. sportspectrum.com/newsletter. Put your email address in, and you are signed up for Sports Spectrum Weekly. Hey, if Big Ben Roethlisberger signs up for it, you should too. Again, sportspectrum.com/newsletter and sign up for Sports Spectrum Weekly.
Welcome to the Sports Spectrum Podcast, the intersection of sports and faith. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
And hi, everybody. Welcome to Sports Spectrum. I am Jason Romano. It is wonderful to have you here joining us on the show today. We got a little bonus episode for you, and the guest is not too shabby. A two-time NBA All-Star, played a long time in the NBA from 1993 to 2005, 13 seasons in the NBA with the Pistons and Knicks. Our guest today, Allan Houston, is joining us on Sports Spectrum. And Allan, a three-time first-team All-SEC in college at Tennessee, the 11th overall pick in the first round of the 1993 NBA draft, 4 seasons with the Pistons, and then spent a decade, 10 years, with the New York Knicks. And he was pretty good with the Knicks. 2 All-Star teams. He played in the 1999 NBA Finals. That was the year that the Knicks, in that shortened season, went and played the Spurs. They were the only number 8 seed ever to make the NBA Finals, and Allan Houston was a big part of that. A year later, he was a member of the 2000 U.S.A. Olympic gold medal basketball team, and now he's doing great things in the front office with the New York Knicks. He also has a really cool ministry that we'll talk about with the Allan Houston Legacy Foundation. But today we're going to talk to Allan about this really cool award that he was given by Athletes in Action, the 2022 Athletes in Action Keys to Life recipient, promoting the 25th anniversary of celebrating Coach John Wooden's Keys to Life Award. Can't wait for you to hear what Allan Houston has to say about that, about his daughter winning a state championship in basketball, and about some things that God has been showing him and teaching him right now. This is Allan Houston, two-time All-Star, longtime NBA shooter, if you will. I call him a guard-forward hybrid, but man, could he shoot. I'd love to see Allan Houston in today's NBA. Allan Houston is our guest right now on Sports Spectrum. Allan Houston, welcome to Sports Spectrum, sir. How you doing?
Oh, man, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to have you back on the show. I need to start by saying that I saw you recently. We were talking about this before we started hitting record at Mohegan Sun here in Connecticut. I live up here in central Connecticut in the Bristol area, cheering, and you were there cheering on your daughter. She was winning a state championship, and then right after she won, our high school, my daughter's high school, won the state championship for the boys. What was that like for you, watching your daughter win a state title? That must have been such a cool thing.
Man, it was awesome. It was incredible. It took. Well, first of all, my daughter her main sport is track and field. She's a high jumper getting recruited. She's a junior.
Okay.
She just is her first year at this school. Maria Conlon, who is a great coach there, played at UConn with Sue Bird and, Diane Taurasi. So she was, it was a great experience for her, and my parents sent me a picture of my junior year when we won the state championship in Louisville, Kentucky in Freedom Hall. And, in Kentucky, there's only one state champion, no classes. It's a very kind of the heritage of high school basketball in Kentucky is very rich. My grandfather, actually, my mother's father, was one of the all-time winningest uh, high school basketball coaches before integration.
Mm,
And my father and me, we're all in the Kentucky High School Hall of Fame.
that's awesome.
And my mother sent me this picture of us, and I sent it to my daughter because it was my junior year, and this is her junior year. I said, we could both have state championships our junior years, and she was like, I'm gonna duplicate that picture. so so it was really cool. Just she texted me that day. She's like, I'm nervous. I said, look, you're prepared. This is a great opportunity, and just hey, God, just keep praying, and God's gonna give you a peace of mind.
Mm,
So she went out, and she is her. Like I said, her main sport is high jump. So when she got into this environment was a whole nother level for her because she hadn't played in all this high level AAU, and
yeah.
she goes in, and they end up starting her, and she hit a three to kind of break this monotony throughout the game, and it kind of broke this and made this it changed the dynamic of the game. And just seeing her like with her teammates afterwards, because it's a great social setting for her, new school, and it was a lot of challenges before she got to this school.
That's great.
And just seeing that, I couldn't. I'm just looking around the arena like, man, as a parent, you watch your child, and it's the hardest thing to do because when you went through this, you're not thinking about the arena, the stands, and how big a moment it is. You're just going through it,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
now all of a sudden you're like, I'm a nervous wreck, man. so
Hmm.
so seeing her go through it, enjoy it, man, it was a thrill, man.
That's great. How are you when you're watching her play? Are you really nervous? More nervous than you were probably when you played in an NBA Finals, right?
Much more nervous, much more critical. Um, but I'm not the type that's yelling and screaming. I'm just internally taking it in.
Hmm.
Until there's certain moments where you just kind of blurt out stuff, and but I think for me, I just try to figure out, okay, what is she seeing, and so I can be able to help her at the right time, of course, after, but as long as she's playing really hard, and I always tell, like, whether it's my kids or other athletes, just be aware how you really impact winning. It's the big shot, the dunk or the three, like that's all good, but how you really knowing where your winning impact is.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Allan Houston is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. He is the recipient of the 2022 Athletes in Action Keys to Life Award, honoring character, leadership, and faith. What does winning an award like that mean to you? Such a cool opportunity there.
Well, it's right up there. I mean, I remember years ago I was awarded with the Bobby Jones Award, um, and Jared Colangelo was there. And when you're receiving an award for just leadership, and I just go back to just the values that my parents gave me, my in-laws gave my wife, and just where that perspective of your calling comes from,
Hmm.
and the examples that were set before you, people that you tried to learn from, and just who you are, who God created us to be. And when you get honored for that, it's special. Like it's an honor, and I'm excited because I'm gonna get a chance to be there. And my wife doesn't usually get to travel with me, and we have 7 children, and so
Hmm.
it's really special at a stage in your life where you kind of, I just turned 50 last year, and so now you're like, you just like, whoa, how that happened,
Yeah.
and you just think about your life, after COVID and everything that's going on. You just really appreciate where God has brought you.
Yeah, and this award promotes the 25th anniversary of celebrating It's Coach John Wooden's Keys to Life Award. I was wondering this. You've met a lot of guys over your career. Did you ever meet Coach Wooden? Did you ever have interactions with him?
Yeah, so McDonald's All-American, he was there to kind of shake our hands but I actually, feel like I'm part of the Wooden tree. My father was assistant coach at the University of Louisville for 13 seasons, and he coached under Denny Crum,
Mm-hmm.
and Denny Crum was an assistant under Coach Wooden. And so, even we talked about the Nations of Coaches event a few years ago, and the
Yeah.
one thing that I loved about that event was they actually ask every coach in there, what is your coaching tree? Where are you from? Like, where did you learn from? Where does your philosophy and values as a coach and a leader come from? And I think it's a great exercise. Why are you coaching? And for me, I grew up with that same philosophy, and my dad, just being a servant and really wanting to help people not just be better basketball players, but better men. So when I think about my kind of lineage to Coach Wooden, it's just, man, it's astounding when I think about that I actually had that link. And the other thing is so I'm currently still working, with the Knicks and do other things. And one of the tools that we refer to is his pyramid of success,
Yes.
and how he really used those pillars and those building blocks to just draw parallels between how you're winning in sports and how you're winning in life.
Mm. So much of what John Wooden was about was not just coaching, but really discipleship, which is a pillar of all of us as followers of Christ. What does that look like for you now at 50 years old? What does discipleship look like on a daily basis, a weekly basis with Allan Houston?
Well, I think first of all, it looks like who brought me into discipleship, right? Even though my father, he wasn't a pastor or minister, my mother, they lived Christian values. They spoke them, they modeled them, and I saw it in my father and my parents. Like, I saw them coach people, and through Christian values. When I got to every team I was on, I feel like I had that person that God put on my team as like a image bearer,
Yeah.
light bearer, right? That person who, even though I wasn't ready to, take and glean from it and take it out and consume it the right way, they were there. And then when I got to New York, I signed with New York, Charlie Ward, Ronnie Grandison. These were guys who really sat me down and helped me understand the scriptures, helped me understand the word, helped me understand how God really wants to move as a coach, as someone like a John Wooden, and through the Holy Spirit. And so from that point on, I kind of realized, wait a minute, yeah, we can talk about leadership, we can talk about mentoring, but it is discipleship. It's helping people understand God's purpose for their life. It's helping them open up that playbook, the Word of God, and say, here's what this really means for you. So for me, it's discipling my children first, those who are close to me, and just the way you move in your life. I've heard people talk about the influence that I've had on them, their life, and I haven't really known them well, but it shows how the Spirit of God can move around you, through you, and if you just kind of open yourself up, in different ways.
So marry the two together, right? Sports and faith. That's what this show is with Sports Spectrum. Basketball
Yeah.
and faith when you played. I always used to hear people say, religion has no place in sports, or, basketball, you have to have a certain type of style or aggression or intensity. And when you're a follower of Christ, and I guess I would point to like David Robinson as the example of a person who, modeled that pretty well. And you were another guy that did that as well. How were you able to do that? I think a lot of people want to live their
Mm.
faith out properly in the workplace, especially as athletes, but also not lose that intensity and be fiery and give their best effort, how are you able to manage to marry those two together?
Well, I think I look at it like, okay, why are you even giving the gift, right? I think everything has to start with a higher perspective, and okay, why are you even giving the gift? What are we trying to accomplish, and who are we really trying to glorify in this?
Hmm.
And so when as so from playing, I think people want to would people would say, hey, this person is an athlete, they're an entertainer, they're in this field, and they're Christians. Like they want to kind of almost separate, hey, this is what they do, and they also have this part of them, as if that was a choice that we decided to make. But no, that is who we are. It's one, right? So you're not just a basketball player that has to be a Christian. That's who you are. That's your character. That's your identity. And so I think the way you marry them is that they're never separate. So for example, if I always wanted to be kind of known as a type of player who you could count on, who's reliable, who, especially like in the end of the game and critical moments, right? Would be there and be available to make a big shot or a big play, and that's what I wanted to be, and that to me is what I believe a Christian, the Christ, that's who Christ is and was, right? And
Yeah.
exemplified faith. Like when you think of Jesus, you think of a person you could trust, who's reliable. Um, and also think of the attributes of Christ: sacrificial, someone who's willing to sacrifice, who willing to work, willing to be um, to be there in tough moments, willing to lead by example. So I think you just look at the attributes of Christ, the attributes of the Holy Spirit and the Father, and how can those show up in what you're doing, whether you're in sports or whatever. I think that's how I view it.
Yeah, that's good. Two more questions for Allan Houston here on Sports Spectrum. You mentioned intensity. We talked about being available. The NBA playoffs are upon us here, and I went back and looked, and you played in 63 career playoff games, including the 1999 NBA Finals that I mentioned earlier. Can you just kind of describe the intensity of an NBA playoff game when you were playing? I mean, it's just different. It feels like than the
Yeah.
regular season. It's everything's ratcheted up a notch or two or four or
Mhm.
10 here. And just you being a player who played in some incredibly big games, maybe describe that for us listening that are fans.
Well, first of all, you know, going back to when my daughter was like talking about playing in a state championship, and
Right.
one thing that we talked about was, do you realize this is the most fun you'll ever playing basketball?
Yeah.
Right? It will never be more fun than in these type of moments. And so the first thing that I always wanted to do is view it that way. Like you will always look back and be like, man, like I will never be able to duplicate this moment. So with that type of excitement and intensity, there has to be a calmness and a preparation uh, that I learned. Right. So this balance between high level intensity, preparation, focus, but calmness, stillness,
Mm.
right? That you need in those moments. And it's something that you kind of have to experience. And but I will say the intensity, every possession, is intense. And there's a saying that we kind of have in our organization that I've heard great coaches say. Even our coach Tom Thibodeau says it is everything matters.
Mm.
And our parents would say that, like, everything matters. Every breath, every look, every movement, everything you do matters because it has impact. So in those moments, every possession, every free throw, every placement of your foot, like you just have to just be constantly aware, and then you let your instincts kind of take over. Um, because those moments are big, you get hot and you feel like another level of confidence, right? You just, it's intense. And I think it just takes a level of concentration and discipline is really where I think playoffs, and then the physicality also is just a totally different level. When I had a conversation with one of our current players about things that you can get away with now that you can't get away with, or I should say that you kind of almost can get away with physically that you probably in the playoffs, but they don't allow certain things in the regular season because in the playoffs, the intensity goes up, physicality goes up, so they can't call as much that way.
Yep.
So all these things just kind of come in, and it comes back to your preparation.
So last question, and this has been great. Thanks so much for your time, Allan Houston. Where you are right now, what's the message, the lesson, the great lesson maybe that God is teaching you and showing you where you are today, 50 years old, going to be 51 in a couple of weeks here, but what's the great lesson that he's showing you right now?
Oh man, maximize your impact. Maximize your impact. I was very blessed to start an organization inspired from my relationship with my father called FISLL. FISLL was a social impact initiative that we started to help people with spiritual, mental wellness, entrepreneurship, and mentoring. And so the 5 basic values and principles, which we call the fundamentals of life, are faith, integrity, sacrifice, leadership, and legacy. And we call those 5 fundamentals of life, those. And so it's all about internalizing, making those values intentional so they become part of your character so that you can maximize your impact. I mean, that's at the end of the day, it's, as an athlete, how do you impact winning? When you win, then guess what? Your value increases. You help everybody. So it's really like, how are you defining winning in your life and maximizing the impact you have?
Yeah, that's good. I love it. It's part of the Allan Houston Legacy Foundation and the FISLL Project. It's FISLL.com. They can go to learn more at the website, FISLL.com. Allan, thanks, man. Congrats on the award. All the best to you. Congrats to your daughter as well for winning the state title. And hopefully we'll get you back on here again soon. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
And many thanks to Allan Houston for being our guest today on Sports Spectrum. You can learn more again about his FISLL project with the Allan Houston Legacy Foundation at FISLL.com, FISLL.com. And then, of course, to learn more about the award that he's been given, the Coach John Wooden Keys to Life Award through Athletes in Action, the 2022 recipient and the 25th anniversary of this award through Athletes in Action and presented by our friends at Athletes in Action. You can go to keystolife.us, keystolife.us to learn more about that as well. And we thank Allan Houston for being our guest today on Sports Spectrum. We thank you as well for tuning in. Do us a favor, click subscribe or follow on whatever app you're listening to this podcast on so that you never miss an episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast. There's been thousands of episodes now at this point. 5 years worth of content, over 3 to 3.2 million downloads of the show. And it's all because you decided to buy into what we're about, and that is to point people to Christ, to point people to Jesus through the world of sports. Thanks for tuning in. We love you guys. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And tune in next time right here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. See you soon.